Me is about Paul, and this week we are going to step back in time to the year 1924 to be exact, which was the year when the founder of the USSR, a man called Vladimir Lenin, or as you might know him as Lenin, passed away. Because here and this week we're going to explore Lenin's Mausoleum. Now, what is Lenin's Mausoleum? Well, Lenin's Mausoleum houses the tomb and the body of Lenin, which you can see in an open coffin or open casket, call it what you will. But it's not just about this place here, it's not just about Lenin's body itself. There is a whole history behind Lenin's Mausoleum, which includes tombs of various figures of the USSR, various general secretaries of the USSR, various famous people associated with the glory and the history of the USSR. People such as Yuri Gagarin or General Zhukov as well. So again, as always guys, we will pойдем вместе. And guys, as always, context here is king. So the key question really is just who is Lenin? Well, Lenin was the founder of the Soviet Union, and sort of prior to Lenin coming into power, Russia was ruled by, should we say, a constitutional monarchy. So if you imagine there was a king or a czar, and what he said went, and he had absolute power, and he felt that he was appointed by divine intervention by God. So in short, the country changed, and the country was, I guess, looking for some kind of change, and Lenin was, I guess, the right man at the right time, and he led what became known as the October Revolution, which in short installed what became a communist government here in Russia and then in the wider USSR. Something which is just a little bit ironic about this situation with Lenin's body is that throughout time, obviously, and especially during the time of the Soviet Union, he developed into, I would say, some kind of personality cult to some degree. Maybe not to the same degree as Stalin, but his image was used frequently. Pictures of his face, statues of Lenin were used throughout the USSR. Now, what I find ironic about this is that in fact Lenin didn't want this, but I guess because he was such an icon to the movement and the ideology of the USSR, his figure and his presence was never-ending, should we say. Okay guys, so we are just in the queue right at the moment, and we've probably got about, I would say, 20 minutes left or so ago. I did overhear one person just saying that there is about a 30-minute wait from the start to the very end of the queue, so I think we'll be okay in regards to the time constraints. So there is basically a set of security scanners just up ahead, typically to what you would see normally in an airport, and then from there is a long walk just around to where the mausoleum actually is. And then we get to go inside the mausoleum, and then after the mausoleum is probably the most interesting part of this place here, because there are a number of graves and tombs, should we say, of ex-leaders of the Soviet Union, plus of course key people connected to the administration of the Soviet Union. And then notwithstanding that, there is also the Kremlin Wall Necropolis, where a number of ashes of leading people such as Yuri Gagarin are interred here as well. Not too sure whether we will be able to see the Kremlin Wall Necropolis as well. Sometimes it's open and sometimes it's closed, but we'll soon find out. Okay guys, so I just wanted to film the queue we have here for Lenin's Mausoleum, and as you can see on the side here, it is going down real far. I'm just thankful I've got my missus who's just waiting in the queue for me. But you can see this queue is pretty extensive, and I'm a little bit concerned at the moment just because the mausoleum actually closes in about 50 minutes time. Now, there does seem to be movement, which is positive news, but at the same time, yeah, it's maybe touch and go whether we get a chance to go inside or not. I'll keep you posted for sure. Okay guys, so I've just passed through the security scanners, and now we're just on the long walk towards where the internal mausoleum actually is. There are some miscellaneous graves here on the left hand side. I'm just going to pan you through to those right now, as you see here as well. And we can see, if we look closely, some names on here as well. And then on the right hand side here we have the Kremlin Wall itself, Kremlin Wall Necropolis. And this is where we start to see some graves, or ashes should we say, interred inside the Kremlin walls in and of itself. Let's have a look, see who the first ones are here. William D. Haywood, whoever that was. Yena Landler, Arthur McManus, And then we have some more miscellaneous graves here as well. To interesne może być. Georgi Konstantinovich Zhukov. To general. So, a very famous general, maybe the most famous general here of the Second World War. Zhukov. Yeah. Now, I can't quite see where Gagarin was. I think he's perhaps somewhere further down here. Okay guys, so we're just at the end of the mausoleum part here now, and I'm probably gonna have to come back and film just some additional parts here now because they've actually changed the layout of the mausoleum itself, or should I say the entrance and the sequencing to the mausoleum. What I mean by that is previous years when I've come here, you would go and enter into the mausoleum first, and then you come out afterwards and see all the statues and the tombs and things of that nature. This year it's a little bit different in the sense that you first of all go past all of the tombs, and then at the end you then come into the mausoleum. But I thought mistakenly that we could go and see all the tombs afterwards as well, and considering that we were pressed for time, this means that I'll come back and just finish the last part very imminently. Hey everyone again, so we have returned to Lenin's mausoleum, and now I'm just back in the queue again, and now that I know the route and the new order, shall we say, I'm now going to spend a bit more time filming some of these statues I'm really fascinated by, which I think is a real highlight here of Lenin's mausoleum. So here we have the statue of Konstantin Chernenko, who I believe was the last Premier, the last General Secretary of the Soviet Union, and indeed the very last person to be buried here on the Kremlin Wall Necropolis behind Lenin's mausoleum. And this right here is the grave of Semyon Budyonnu, I believe. What we see here is the grave of Klement Voroshilov. And next up here we have the grave of Andrei Zhdanov. Here we have the tomb of Leonid Brezhnev, one of the General Secretaries of the Soviet Union, and was in power for quite a long time, I believe, roughly 20 or so years, if I'm not mistaken. Right here in front of us is the grave of one Felix Dzerzhinsky, one of the interesting figures of the start of the Soviet Union period, shall we say. And this was the guy who was the head, I believe, of, I think it was called the Cheka at the time, which was the precursor to what eventually became the KGB. And I believe this guy's statue is actually outside the main building in Moscow as well, where the current headquarters are of the new Secret Service, shall we say. And here we have the grave of Yuri Andropov, who was one of the General Secretaries of the Soviet Union, and also at one time was the head of the Secret Service as well before this. He was only president for or should I say, General Secretary for a very brief period of time. Good. Right in front of us we have the grave of Mikhail Kalinin. And this right here is the tomb of Stalin himself. Now for a period of time, Stalin was actually buried inside the Kremlin, inside the mausoleum alongside Lenin. But then his body was removed some years later when there was a period called de-Stalinization. What's interesting about this is that this year there's about an even number of flowers on each of the graves, if you just follow here, of the tombs of the various different figures or leaders, should we say, of the Soviet Union. But when I've been here before, usually it's been a mountain of roses literally on Stalin's tomb compared to some of the other gensets or some of the other figures here of the Soviet Union. So yeah, it's just an interesting observation that differs this time from when I was here before. Right here in front of us now is the grave of Mikhail Suslov. So guys, we are right on noon, hence why you can hear the sound of the bell tower just behind me here now. We've just been for a walk alongside the graves and the main tombs of the leaders of the Soviet Union. We can't get quite close to the Kremlin Wall and see all of the graves. There are some graves of ashes, should we say, that are interred inside the Kremlin Wall, just behind the main graves. We couldn't quite access those. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it isn't, unfortunately. But we've done our best to get as close as we possibly can. And now we're just walking around to go inside the main mausoleum itself. Sadly, I cannot film inside here. Sincere apologies for that. But yeah, rules are the rules, unfortunately. But the real highlight of this trip is the graves and the tombs and the history behind this place, I think. So guys, it took me about 2 times to sort of come back here to Lenin's mausoleum and just film everything here because of the issues before that I mentioned, the logistical issues with me not understanding properly the order and the sequence. So originally before, like you were saying, you would go to the mausoleum first and then see the statues and the graves afterwards. This time it's the opposite way round, hence why we're a little bit rushed beforehand. But nevertheless, I managed to do it in 2 goes, and just wanted to give a bit of a brief overview as to my thoughts just after I'd come outside of the mausoleum in and of itself. So the first thing that really struck me was when you go inside the mausoleum, it's cold, really cold. And you notice that especially on a day like today, on a hot day like today. So you go in there first, you're directed by a policeman who sends you to the left. You then go down a set of stairs, and then what happens is you walk into like a central room where Lenin's body is, and his body is housed in a glass cabinet, and there is a walking area that goes, if you imagine the sides of a square, there's like 3 sides of a square, and you walk around each side of the body. Not all 4 sides, but 3 sides of a square, if you like. And then you exit and everyone keeps moving. And obviously inside there are policemen who are making sure that you can't take photos and do anything that's disrespectful. If you are coming inside here and you're wearing a hat or anything like that, you'll be asked to remove it for respectful purposes. So yeah, just a bit of an overview as to my time here in the mausoleum. But for me, the real highlight is not so much seeing Lenin's body, it's the history behind the place. It's what you see behind the mausoleum as well. So it's the graves, it's the tombs, it's the people who are interred, the ashes who are interred inside the Kremlin Wall itself. Who are these people? What is the background of these people? All of this adds to the experience. I've had a cracking time here. I highly recommend, if you come to Moscow in the future, then I highly recommend that you come to Lenin's mausoleum. It's a must-see for me. Well, comrades, that is it from me this week, and thank you ever so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button, comment and subscribe. It just allows my videos to be seen by a whole new world of people. Take care, thank you ever so much, and Счастливо.